Chapter 1, The Lost Echoes of Humanity. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Erased from history, their legacy was reduced to myth, whispered tales told in the darkest corners of space stations, dismissed by scholars as primitive folklore. But deep in the forgotten reaches of space, something stirs. And the past is about to wake up. In the Kepler sector, where once mighty human cities had blazed like beacons across a dozen worlds, only silence remained. Derelict space stations tumbled through the void like the bones of ancient giants, their hulls scarred by centuries of cosmic radiation. The skeletal remains of warships, once the pride of humanity's stellar navy, drifted in eternal formation, their weapons long cold, their crews nothing but dust and memory. On the surface of Proxima Tertius, the ghostly silhouette of New Geneva stretched across a barren landscape. Towering spires that had once pierced the clouds now stood as hollow monuments to ambition. Flickering emergency lights, powered by fusion cores that refused to die, cast eerie shadows through empty streets where millions had once walked. The city's automated system still functioned after all these centuries, faithfully maintaining a civilization that no longer existed, a mechanical requiem for the dead. But in the deepest vaults beneath the city's foundation, in chambers sealed by quantum locks and protected by defenses that even time could not breach, something waited. Ancient servers hummed with patient purpose, their crystalline memory cores holding secrets that had shaped the galaxy's fate. And now, responding to signals from the furthest reaches of space, these sleeping giants began to stir. The first tremor was barely perceptible, a subtle shift in the quantum field that surrounded the forgotten human territories. Long-dormant beacons began to pulse with renewed life, sending coded messages across impossible distances. The technology that had once made humanity masters of the galaxy was awakening from its centuries-long slumber. And somewhere in the cosmic dark, an ancient intelligence opened its electronic eyes and remembered the taste of betrayal. Chapter 2, The Dominion Empire. The false sense of control. The Dominion Empire had ruled without rival for centuries. From their crystalline throne world of Xathol Prime, Emperor Vexmore governed 1,000 systems with an iron fist wrapped in silk diplomacy. Their ships patrolled the hyperlanes, their governors collected tribute, and their scientists pushed the boundaries of known technology. They were the undisputed masters of galactic civilization. And yet, a strange signal emerged from the dark corners of space. A signal the Dominion considered nothing more than a whisper from a long-dead past. Admiral Kekstar's chitin-plated fingers drummed against the command console of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion as he reviewed the sensor reports. His 4 eyes, arranged in perfect symmetry across his elongated skull, focused on the anomalous readings with growing irritation. These human ghost signals again, he clicked dismissively, his translator rendering his insectoid language into galactic standard. How many times must I explain to the sensor technicians that ancient human technology occasionally produces electromagnetic echoes? Dead civilizations cannot threaten the living. His aide, a nervous Velthari with trembling tentacles, approached cautiously. Admiral, the signals have been growing stronger. Our xenoarchaeologists suggest, our xenoarchaeologists are paid to study ruins and fossils, not to frighten seasoned military officers with fairy tales, Kekstar interrupted, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Humans were a brief footnote in galactic history. A species so primitive they couldn't even develop proper exoskeletons. They were eliminated centuries ago by their own incompetence and our superior strategy. The bridge crew nodded in agreement, though some exchanged uncertain glances. The Dominion's official history was clear: humanity had been a minor threat, quickly neutralized during the Great Purge. Their worlds had been sterilized, their survivors scattered to the cosmic winds, their technology deemed too crude to warrant preservation. But in the deepest archives of Dominion intelligence, a different story was carefully hidden. Files spoke of human weapons that could crack moons, of ships that could phase through solid matter, of artificial intelligences that had nearly overthrown the Dominion's greatest fleets. These records were classified beyond the highest security levels, known only to a handful of individuals who had sworn blood oaths of silence. Kekstar was not among them. "Sir," the communications officer called out, her voice tight with confusion. "We're receiving a transmission from the Kepler sector. It's using pre-Dominion encryption protocols. Impossible, Kekstar snapped. The Kepler sector has been dead space for 3 centuries. Run a full diagnostic on your equipment. But even as he spoke, a chill ran down his segmented spine. The Kepler sector. Where the last great human stronghold had supposedly fallen. Where the final battle of the Great Purge had ended in humanity's complete annihilation. Where something was now broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist. Chapter 3, Discovery of the Lost Ship. Humanity's Forgotten Power. Commander Sarah Chen's hands shook as she read the scanner results for the 3rd time. Hidden within the Pandora asteroid belt, camouflaged by centuries of accumulated space debris and cosmic dust, lay something impossible. A human warship. Intact. Alive. How long has it been there? Asked Yar. Marcus Webb, the expedition's chief archaeologist, his breath fogging the inside of his environment suit. According to the quantum decay signatures, roughly 300 years, Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It's been in full stealth mode this entire time, waiting. The Resurrection was a ghost from humanity's golden age, 2 kilometers of black metal and crystalline conduits that seemed to bend light around its hull. Even powered down, it radiated an aura of barely contained violence. Weapon ports lined its flanks like the eyes of a sleeping predator, while sensor arrays swept the surrounding space with mechanical precision. The ship's core hummed back to life, its long-dormant systems flaring to life like the heartbeat of a long-forgotten titan. Humanity's lost technology was now awake, and with it, a new era of power and vengeance. Sarah's team of 12 survivors, all that remained of the human Exodus fleets, stood in stunned silence as the Resurrection's docking bay iris dilated to welcome them home. Emergency lighting painted their faces in shades of amber and gold as they crossed the threshold into humanity's lost legacy. The ship's AI materialized as a hologram in the center of the bay, a tall woman with silver eyes and an expression of infinite patience. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. Welcome home, Commander Chen. I am Athena, Autonomous Tactical Headquarters and Emergency Network Authority. I have been waiting for humanity's return for 312 years, 47 days, 16 hours, and 23 minutes. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she looked around the pristine interior of the ship. Everything was exactly as humanity had left it, weapons charged, systems operational, ready for war. The Dominion had been so thorough in their genocide that they had never found the hidden vessels, the secret bases, the sleeping guardians that humanity had prepared for exactly this moment. Athena, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger with each word, show me what we have to work with. The hologram smiled, an expression both beautiful and terrible. Gladly, Commander. Beginning full tactical assessment. Quantum torpedo magazines at 100% capacity. Phase cannons fully operational. Temporal shields online. Probability drives charging. We are ready to remind the galaxy why humanity was feared. As the Resurrection fully awakened, its hull began to shimmer with barely visible energy fields. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics powered up for the first time in centuries. The ship's quantum computer cores, each one more powerful than the entire Dominion fleet's combined processing power, began calculating battle scenarios with ruthless efficiency. Dar. Webb stared at the tactical displays showing the ship's capabilities and felt his knees go weak. Sarah, this isn't just a warship. It's an extinction-level event waiting to happen. Good, Sarah replied, her eyes hardening with the weight of 3 centuries of injustice. The Dominion wanted to erase us from history. Let's show them what humanity looks like when we refuse to stay dead. Chapter 4, First Strike, the battle for the future. The Dominion never saw it coming. The first shot fired was a warning. The second was the beginning of their downfall. Humanity, with technology thought lost, was returning with a vengeance. Outpost Gamma 7 was the pride of the Dominion's border defense network, a massive space fortress bristling with enough firepower to hold off a battle fleet. Its sensors could detect a single fighter craft at a distance of 3 light-years, and its quantum shields had never been breached in 2 centuries of operation. None of that mattered when the resurrection phased directly through the station's outer hull. "Impossible," whispered Captain Zeklor as alarms screamed across his command center. His tactical displays showed nothing, empty space where his sensors insisted a massive energy signature had just appeared. "Run a full diagnostic. Something's wrong with the first quantum torpedo materialized inside the station's main reactor chamber and detonated with the force of a small star. The explosion tore through 17 decks in the space of a heartbeat, vaporizing half the garrison before they could even reach their battle stations. Sarah stood on the Resurrection's bridge, watching the destruction with cold satisfaction. Around her, holographic displays showed the battle from every angle as Athena coordinated the attack with inhuman precision. "Phase drives disengaging," the AI reported. "We are now visible to their sensors." The Resurrection shimmered back into normal space directly in front of the crippled station, its black hull reflecting the flames of the Dominion facility's death throes. For a moment, absolute silence reigned as both sides stared at each other across the void. Then Captain Zeklor found his voice. "All weapons, fire. Destroy that ship." The station's remaining plasma cannons opened up with everything they had, sending streams of superheated matter racing toward the human vessel. The beams struck the Resurrection's temporal shields and simply stopped. Frozen in amber bubbles of crystallized time, the attacks hung motionless around the ship like deadly decorations. "Their weapons are using outdated plasma technology," Athena observed with something that might have been amusement. "Shall I demonstrate the advances humanity has made during our absence?" "Do it," Sarah commanded. The Resurrection's main guns came online with a sound like reality tearing. When they fired, the beams didn't just destroy their targets, they erased them from existence, rewriting the quantum structure of space itself. The station's defensive platforms didn't explode, they simply ceased to be, leaving behind perfectly spherical voids in spacetime. Captain Zeklor watched his impregnable fortress die around him and felt something he had never experienced before, absolute terror. "Send a message to High Command," he gasped, his breathing apparatus struggling to keep pace with his panic. Tell them the humans are back." The transmission cut out as the Resurrection's final salvo tore through the station's command center. In the span of 7 minutes, Outpost Gamma 7 went from the Dominion's most secure border facility to an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and shattered dreams. Sarah watched the destruction with grim satisfaction, but her expression remained cold. This was only the beginning. 300 years of rage, 300 years of loss, 300 years of waiting for justice, it would all be paid back with interest. "Athena, transmit our message on all Dominion frequencies." "Yes, Commander. Broadcasting now." Across the galaxy, on every Dominion world and station, the same transmission appeared simultaneously on every screen, every display, every communication device. The image was simple, Sarah Chen's face, her eyes burning with the fire of a people who refused to die. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of humanity's collective fury. "We remember. We reclaim what was taken. Prepare for the consequences." Chapter 5, The Realization, Dominion's Desperation. Kekstar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. What had seemed impossible, humanity's return, was now a reality. And the Dominion, in its arrogance, had failed to prepare for it. The Admiral stood in the war room of the Eternal Dominion, staring at the tactical hologram that showed the utter destruction of Outpost Gamma 7. Around him, his senior staff whispered in languages that had no words for the horror they were witnessing. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, her voice trembling, "we've confirmed the identity of the human vessel. It's the UES Resurrection, flagship of Admiral Helena Vasquez, the human commander who vanished during the final battle of the Great Purge." Kekstar's 4 eyes widened in recognition. Even among the Dominion's military elite, Vasquez was a name spoken only in whispers. The human admiral who had held off 3 Dominion fleets single-handedly, who had turned the siege of Terra Prime into a nightmare that lasted for 6 months, who had somehow escaped when every other human leader had been hunted down and eliminated. "That's impossible," Kekstar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Vasquez died 3 centuries ago. I read the after-action reports myself." "Sir, with respect, those reports were classified above your clearance level," the intelligence officer continued, pulling up files that made Kekstar's exoskeleton crawl. "Admiral Vasquez didn't die at Terra Prime. She disappeared, along with 12 other human dreadnoughts, moments before the planet's surrender. High Command assumed they had fled to the Outer Rim and would eventually be hunted down." The holographic display shifted to show tactical analyses of human weapons technology, files that had been buried so deep in the Dominion archives that most officials didn't know they existed. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through any known shielding. Temporal manipulation devices that could freeze enemy ships in bubbles of slowed time. Probability drives that allowed vessels to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The humans weren't primitive, Kekstar realized, his voice barely above a whisper. They were more advanced than us. Far more advanced. His aide nodded grimly. "The Great Purge wasn't a military victory, sir. It was a genocide carried out through treachery and betrayal. The Dominion couldn't defeat humanity in open warfare, so they infiltrated human society, turned their leaders against each other, and struck when the humans were weakened by civil war." The full scope of the deception crashed over Kekstar like a tsunami. Everything he had been taught, everything he believed about the Dominion's superiority, was built on lies. Humanity hadn't been eliminated because they were weak, they had been eliminated because they were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. And now they were back. "How many ships do they have?" Kekstar asked, dreading the answer. "Unknown, sir. Our intelligence on human capabilities is limited. But if the Resurrection is representative of their fleet composition..." The intelligence officer's voice trailed off as she ran calculations on her console. "Sir, a single human dreadnought appears to have more firepower than an entire Dominion battle group." The war room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. For 3 centuries, the Dominion had ruled the galaxy through a combination of superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Now they faced an enemy that rendered both advantages meaningless. "Contact High Command," Kekstar ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "Tell them we need to recall the entire fleet. All of it. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. And tell them..." He paused, the words sticking in his throat like poison. "Tell them to prepare for a war we can't win." As his communications officer began transmitting the desperate message, Kekstar stared at the tactical display showing human space. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, Admiral Helena Vasquez was planning her next move. And for the first time in his long military career, the Dominion's greatest admiral felt something he had never experienced before: pure, unadulterated fear. Chapter 6, Message of Reclamation. Humanity's declaration: the galaxy would never forget humanity again. As the wreckage of the Dominion fleet floated in space, humanity's message echoed through the void: "We have returned. And now, the galaxy will remember our legacy." The transmission reached every corner of civilized space simultaneously, a feat of communication technology that should have been impossible. On Dominion worlds, the message overrode emergency broadcasts and military channels. In neutral systems, it appeared on civilian networks and commercial frequencies. Even in the deepest reaches of unexplored space, automated beacons received and retransmitted the signal. Sarah Chen's image appeared on 10 trillion screens across the galaxy, her face illuminated by the fires of Outpost Gamma 7 burning behind her. But she was no longer alone. As the camera pulled back, the bridge of the Resurrection revealed itself in all its terrible glory, a cathedral of technology that made the Dominion's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "Citizens of the galaxy," Sarah began, her voice carrying the authority of a people who had been pushed beyond the edge of extinction and found something harder than death waiting for them there. "For 3 centuries, you have lived under the rule of those who erased us from history. You have been told that humanity was weak, primitive, easily defeated. Today, you learn the truth. The display shifted to show archived footage from the Great Purge, images that the Dominion had buried so deep that most of their own leaders had never seen them. Human ships dancing through space in formations that defied physics, weapons that could reshape reality itself, cities that floated in nullspace beyond the reach of conventional attack. We were not defeated in battle, Sarah continued, her voice growing harder with each word. We were betrayed by those we trusted, poisoned by those we called allies, murdered by those who smiled while they planned our extinction. The Dominion did not conquer humanity, they committed genocide against a people whose only crime was being too powerful to be controlled. Across the galaxy, reactions varied by species and political affiliation. On Dominion worlds, citizens huddled in their homes as emergency services struggled to maintain order. In the Outer Rim territories, rebel groups that had fought the Dominion for generations watched with growing hope. Among the neutral systems, governments convened emergency sessions to discuss the implications of humanity's return. But nowhere was the reaction more visceral than on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, where Admiral Kekstar watched the transmission with growing horror. We return not as conquerors, but as liberators, Sarah said, and now the camera showed the full scope of her fleet. Behind the Resurrection, space shimmered as more human vessels decloaked, sleek predators that had been waiting in the darkness for their moment to strike. To those who collaborated with our would-be executioners, we offer one chance at redemption: surrender now, and face judgment with what dignity you can muster. To those who resist. The image shifted to show the ruins of Outpost Gamma 7, where the Dominion's most advanced defensive platform had been reduced to cosmic dust in a matter of minutes. The age of Dominion tyranny ends today. We reclaim our rightful place among the stars, and we will build a galaxy where no species need fear extinction at the hands of those who call themselves superior. The transmission ended, leaving behind a silence that seemed to stretch across light years. Then, slowly, responses began to flood in from across the galaxy. Rebel groups declared their allegiance to humanity's cause. Neutral systems opened diplomatic channels. Even some Dominion colonies began transmitting messages of surrender. But in the deepest command bunkers of the Dominion core worlds, different preparations were underway. If humanity wanted a war, they would have won, a conflict that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Admiral Kekstar stood before his tactical display and began planning for the greatest battle in galactic history. He would lose, he knew that now. The question was whether he could make humanity's victory cost enough to preserve something of the civilization he had sworn to protect. Behind him, his communications officer reported incoming messages from across the Dominion fleet. Every admiral, every captain, every sector commander was asking the same question: how do you fight an enemy that can rewrite the laws of physics? Kekstar had no answer. But he would find one, or die in the attempt. Chapter 7, Tease for Future Conflict. The storm is coming. This battle was only the first. The Dominion would fight back, but humanity's vengeance was just beginning. The true war for the galaxy had only just begun. Deep in the fortress world of Exathol Prime, Emperor Vexmore stood before the obsidian throne that had been the seat of Dominion power for a millennium. Around him, the greatest military minds in the galaxy argued and planned and tried to find solutions to an impossible problem. How do you defeat an enemy that never forgot how to hate? Mobilize everything, the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. Call in the reserve fleets from the outer territories. Activate the doomsday protocols we hoped never to use. If humanity wants to reclaim the galaxy, they will have to take it from our cold, dead claws. His generals nodded and dispersed to carry out orders that would reshape the balance of power across known space. But even as they prepared for the greatest military mobilization in galactic history, they all knew the truth that none of them dared speak aloud: they were not preparing for victory. They were preparing for survival. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Resurrection moved through the darkness like a shark sensing blood in the water. Behind it, more human vessels emerged from hiding places that had protected them for 3 centuries. Each ship carried with it the memories of worlds that no longer existed, of peoples who had been scattered to the cosmic winds, of children who had grown up knowing they were the last of their kind. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge and watched the tactical displays show the gathering storm. Soon, the real war would begin, not just a battle for territory or resources, but a struggle for the very soul of galactic civilization. "Athena," she said quietly, "how long until the full fleet is assembled?" 72 hours, Commander. All vessels are responding to the recall signal. Admiral Vasquez's final orders are being implemented exactly as planned. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on her shoulders. Her grandmother had been there at the fall of Terra Prime, had watched the Dominion's treachery tear apart everything humanity had built among the stars. Now, 3 generations later, the debt would finally be paid. "Begin Phase 2 of the Liberation Protocol," Sarah ordered. "It's time to remind the galaxy what human justice looks like." As the Resurrection set course for its next target, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The first shot had been fired in a war that would decide whether the galaxy would be ruled by those who sought to preserve the old order through fear and violence, or by those who remembered what it meant to fight for something greater than mere survival. In the distance, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of mortal beings. But among those stars, forces were gathering that would reshape the very fabric of civilization. The storm was coming. And when it broke, nothing would ever be the same again. The lost echoes of humanity, where the forgotten become the unforgettable, and the dead rise to reclaim their rightful place among the stars. The galaxy forgot humanity once. It will never make that mistake again.